there are communities of real people who want to start to think about, can they do something around wind in their area? Can they do something about solar? Can they do something about waste? Can they redesign part of their infrastructure? How do you do that? How do you find other people who've already done that? How do you find the finance? How do you learn from other people that are trying to do it? In terms of wind, there may be a third or fifth generation technology solution that would be really useful if you were India, because the wind intensity is less. And where do you find the technology that might work under conditions of lesser intensity? Yeah, so some very practical, granular questions, where at the moment people are kind of reinventing the wheel all the time, or just kind of feel so overwhelmed by it that they end up not being able to take it forward. You also have at least the beginnings of the establishment of enabling conditions. Feeder tariffs, kind of system that operates in Germany, which the UK is going to move into soon, where people can start to plug in their own energy systems and make money from it and become much more individually part of the solution. So you're kind of moving to a point where there's a desire to do it. Some of the enabling frameworks have been created which will support doing it. So how do you just kind of bring that together? And that's what this platform would do. It would enable people to move from being kind of coming into the platform, the conversation, through their tribal identity, whether it's an individual or it's an organisation, to identify the particular climate actions that they want to take, and for a system to then identify other people that want to take those climate actions, and to then aggregate together, learn together, co-create solutions based on those specific actions they want to take. And it's just brilliant, I think, but then I would. And if you kind of get that as the kind of project design, then some of you are going to be geeky and nerdy enough to kind of go, I can't commit to this until I understand more of the technology, and it's at that point where I start to kind of withdraw from the room. But if you kind of get that that's the thing we want to do and the thing that we think we can do, then hi Pavan. Nikolai, it's great for Pavan to hear this bit of it. Pavan, are you okay if we just kind of keep going for a bit and then we'll bring you in very soon? So Pavan Sukhdev, team leader of the TEEB, the Economics of Ecosystems and Biodiversity, which honestly is probably the most stellar and important policy initiative taking place on this planet at the moment. And it's just great to have Pavan with us. And we'll talk about later how, if you're tackling climate, then also you've got to logically tackle biodiversity issues. The greatest carbon sinks are forests. Coral reefs are going to erode at 380 parts per million. Don't fancy much, 350, I'm sorry. Don't fancy much the chances of coral reefs. So the solution is one where carbon and biodiversity obviously need to be related. And that needs to be owned, and you can't have a future for business without natural resources, much less a future for humanity. So we kind of want to weave that into some of the conversation if you don't already feel inspired enough. But back to the design issues. So if you kind of get that that's the challenge, we've described the challenge, we think, and the one other bit I'll just kind of add into the argument I know to Nikolai, is that if we're honest, we don't know what's going to work. We have to bring to scale a whole series of technology solutions linked into new ways of behaving and new ways of creating falling living value in a very short time frame, and that the old business model over years, which would bring new technologies to market, won't fully meet the challenge of enabling that tackle within the timescale of this whole we're talking about CCS and other technologies, which are as yet largely unproven and untested. So the role of the commons in sharing the risk and sharing the learning, and I don't just mean financial risk in all of this, but I do mean that as well, in creating a new boundary between the public and the private, which enables new technology and new innovation to come to market and at scale very rapidly, is really, really important if we're going to find a way through this. So the power of the commons in terms of that which is known and is held in common being applied to this issue is goes beyond wouldn't it be great if people could get together and start plugging in their own windmills kind of thing, which it would, but into creating a platform for much more generative, much more transformational, much more real-time and quick learning process and capacity building across communities, across countries, across regions. So that's